the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so very much for listening to our little show here. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If that's something you want to listen to on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple and Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe. Because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which means we are live on YouTube. But frankly, if you go over and you subscribe on the YouTube channel, A to Z Sports National YouTube channel, and you hit the subscribe button and you hit that notification bell, it doesn't matter when we go live because you hit that notification bell. You'll be notified when we go live. You can hop right on with us. You can be a part of the show, comment. We love everybody that comes and hangs out. We love going back and forth with everybody. It's the absolute best. So make sure you hit all those buttons and all that nonsense too. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. Lordy, it's a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining. The birds are chirping. And it's not just because the weather is absolutely immaculate, but the Tennessee Vols are back in the College World Series, folks. They're going back to Omaha, and it just feels so good to be a Tennessee Vol. What is up, Zach?
Hey, yeah, it's sounds like those birds are saying Omaha out there when they're chirping along. It's certainly a beautiful Monday, even if the sun wasn't out today.
For sure. I mean, it's thankfully might have to go have me a little dinner on a patio somewhere after this. The weather was incredible, but yeah, either way, it would have been a really nice morning in Tennessee today because this baseball program, I mean, what can you even say at this point? The accolades that you could give them. I think I've said this before, but essentially the only thing that Tony Vitello has not done at this point is win a national championship. It's the final thing he has to do. I think this team is lined right up. Obviously, that's going to be our main topic of conversation tonight. But they have done absolutely everything front to back. SEC championships, making it to Omaha consistently 3 out of the last 4 years now. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I think the funniest part maybe of all of this was that this past week, the anniversary passed of Tony Vitello's hiring, which is the most ironic, funny thing that's probably happened at Tennessee in the last 10 years. Probably the best coach at Tennessee at the moment. You know, hey, maybe Josh Heupel will get there. Rick Barnes is amazing. But John Curry hired him all the way back 7 years ago. He hired Tony Vitello, and then he got himself fired a few weeks later with Shiano Sunday. But that anniversary passed, I think, like last week sometime. What a time to be alive that was. I was there up front, close and personal in the media at the time. I don't know. Do you want to commemorate that in any way, Zach, that beautiful moment?
I just wonder if John Curry somewhere right now is talking about, I hired that guy. That was me. Tennessee is where they are. They might have fired me. I might have botched the Butch Jones replacement search. But, I can't blame him if he does. And honestly, we should all thank John Curry anyway, because he gave us incredible content and entertainment for really that whole 2017 season that was
Oh, I think Zach might have frozen. Did he? Is that only on my end? I can't. If somebody can comment and say, "Am I the frozen one, or is Zach the frozen one?" That's not great. Hold on. There. Are you good?
No. Did I go away?
It looked like it had completely frozen on my end, and I don't know if it was me or you or what exactly happened. You got about halfway through that thing before it happened, and I'm not entirely sure which. So maybe finish that out one more time.
Yeah, just
somebody in the comments said you were frozen on that one.
Yeah, that whole 2017 season would have been miserable without John Curry and Butch Jones and all of that. He gave us some entertainment, but going through all that was worth it to get Tony Vitello after what he's done these last 4 years since COVID. Incredible. I mean, just one of the most underrated rebuilds in college sports, period, has happened because of John Curry ultimately, but really it's Tony Vitello that's put the work in.
Well, and I think Tony takes a lot of what he's done here very personally, as he should. And you saw that last night in a awesome rant that he gave after the game. I know a volunteer here in the comments. He says, please tell me you're going to discuss Tony V's rant. Oh, we are. For sure. We're going to talk about all of that. That's going to be tonight's show. Really, I mean, that's going to be about it also because not a whole lot else is going on across Tennessee sports at the moment. But yeah, going to talk about Tennessee making the College World Series and everything that means and how it sets up with Florida State. But then also Tony V just taking a flamethrower last night at the podium. We'll discuss it all right after I tell you about our first great sponsor, and that is Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee that's bringing sports betting to a whole new level. And when you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to a $100 no-danger first wager. If your bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for that amount of your bet up to $100. But there's even more good news. Zen Sports offers a one-of-a-kind VIP rewards program, and if you qualify, you'll earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, you name it. There's even sportsbook bonuses, and the VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play might qualify for VIP consideration, check out the program at zensports.com/VIP. What are you waiting for? Zen Sports offers true odds on all parlays. So get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. No danger. First wager limited to plus 500 odds to qualify. Boosted odds are derived from the equivalent parlay bets offered in Tennessee. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Zen Sports. I flubbed that one. I'm in a battle with myself to read that as quickly and as crisply as possible week over week. That one I didn't nail it tonight. I was off. My game's off.
Got to improve the lung capacity just a little.
Yes, because you got to just do it all in one gasp. And yes, that's what did Butch always say? 1% better every day, or 1-0 every day. Eyes on the thighs.
4 great efforts in 6 seconds. Brick by brick. 5-star hearts.
I didn't have a 5-star heart on that one.
Life champion.
That was a 4-star heart effort at best. Maybe one day I'll get there.
Did he sign any 4-star hearts? Maybe Dontavius Blair might have been, because I felt like that guy was going to be the answer and never.
What happened there?
No, now we can say that dude's probably like 30 now. So
yeah, he's about as old as us, I think. Bad. God, 4-star heart. That's funny. Anyway, let's get down to it. Tennessee baseball. I came dressed for the occasion, wearing. Oh, you can't see it because I have the blur on, but this is the Tennessee College World Series 2021. The first time Tony Vitello made it. Made sure I wore this tonight in honor of the occasion. The Vols beat Evansville twice out of 3 games, and they move on to the College World Series for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. An absolutely ridiculous run, one that I would say I never thought I would see before Tony Vitello showed up. It's absolutely crazy. But let's talk about how this exactly happened, because it wasn't just a straight A to B, nice and easy. And really, almost every series was, besides Tennessee's, was just kind of 2-0, moving on to the College World Series. North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, Florida State, who Tennessee's about to play. It was all just 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, moved right on. Tennessee loses the second game, and they talked about this stat constantly in that game 3. Tennessee is the first overall 1 seed ever to lose to a 4 seed in the Super Regional or whatever that was. Ultimately, Tennessee wins 12-1 in that final game. But let's start here, Zach. I do have to admit, they opened up a 1-0 lead. Evansville did, right at the beginning. And I would be lying if I said I was not a little nervous there to start. A little, oh boy, we're really going to do this, aren't we? We're just going to let the wheels fall off, and this one's over. We're about to lose in the Super Regional again. And I let the hurt get to me from the past. But yeah, Tennessee got it together. But how are you feeling going into that one, Zach?
I mean, a little anxious just because of I don't know, the whole battered Vols syndrome, I guess. I mean, we've seen so many things unravel, and even though the fortune has turned so much over the last 4, 5, 6 years, there's still that part of you. It's like we've seen this for so long in Tennessee sports. But I think, you know, just looking at it logically, it was always going to be tough for Evansville to beat Tennessee in a 3-game series. And as we saw at the end of that, third game on Sunday evening, they just were never going to have enough pitching to keep up with Tennessee and to shut down Tennessee's bats. I mean, some of those guys in Tennessee's lineup are just inevitable. I mean, they're going to get theirs. Christian Moore, Billy Amick, who was really, he kind of went through that slump through, not really even a slump, just the lack of home run power there through much of May. He's hitting his stride again at the perfect time. Keep that going in Omaha. Even the bottom of the order coming through and hitting some home runs. You were never going to keep those guys down. And Evansville, they're a good team, and we knew they were going to play hard, and they did. And I like the way that they carried themselves and the way they played the game. They're tough. They didn't have the horses to keep up with Tennessee, and I think we kind of knew that, but still, you just never know what's going to happen in these kinds of games. Their bats could have got hot and could have caused Tennessee to burn through pitching at a faster rate than they did. And ultimately, that's what you have to do in Omaha as well, is keep your arms as fresh as possible, and that's what's going to win a College World Series. You got to have the bats, of course, but the pitching has to be strong. And so Evansville just being who they were, I mean, you saw what they were leaving guys in there last night. It was kind of like waving the white flag, like there's nothing else they could really do there. So even if that game had been tight, like we thought it was going to be for a moment early on in the first inning yesterday, I still think Tennessee would have been able to come through the way they did.
Yeah, I mean, as I already said, I would be lying if I told you that, especially I'd say that fourth inning. Tennessee, you crack some home runs and you got a nice little lead. I think it might have been 4-1, 5-1. But you go into that fourth inning, which is where you fell apart in game 2. And I mean, it totally imploded in game 2. They were getting anything they wanted at the plate against you in game 2. And they get the bases loaded. You had that double play that wasn't. Christian Moore drops the ball. It had rained, like a hellacious rain, right before the game. And I'm here in Knoxville. I saw it. It was a lot. It was a lot of rain. It's not necessarily surprising that the field was kind of slippery and goofy, but I mean, that double play got messed up, and I was like, oh, we're really going to do this. This is, yep. Here's where it flies off the tracks. And they got it together. And I think that kind of broke the spirit of Evansville, where they kind of noticed, oh, this isn't going to be like yesterday. This is not going to be the same. And as you said, they were trotting out dudes that had played the day before. I think, did one of those guys play all 3 days on the mound? I mean, that they were hurting for arms, and ultimately that was going to be their undoing almost no matter how that went. Even if they were able to score a bunch that day, I think Tennessee was going to shell on them no matter how that went because of that. And they powered through it, and Xander Sechrist was just fantastic. Just really, really great. Probably the best outing of his entire career. It was the longest outing of his entire career. A beautiful send-off for him at Lindsey Nelson. He got this awesome standing ovation. It was great. It really was kind of a storybook little game for Tennessee there, because you got to send off Kirby Cannell, who we had this conversation, me and some friends of mine. Is he the John Fulkerson of Tennessee baseball, Kirby? I feel like he was not as prominent of a player as Fulke, but in terms of his symbolism, his love for the program, his sort of just like, I'm gonna do whatever. I mean, he was the bat guy out there for Tennessee, collecting gloves and stuff after dudes were at bat, and then would go in and pitch in crucial moments and be a great clutch guy for you. He feels like a little bit of a John Fulkerson there. Do you agree maybe?
Yeah. I could see that. I think Kirby was a little more all positive with him. I think Fulkerson, there were times you love Fulke, you got frustrated Rick Barnes got frustrated at times with Fulke, especially there towards the end. But yeah, it's a similar comparison, I'd say. Just Kirby's not, I mean, He's not going to be an MLB pitcher. He's not going to be out there, throwing in the NLCS or ALCS anytime soon. But man, I mean, where is that team without him? Like, he ate so many innings, so many pivotal innings, and just whenever his number was called, he was ready. No matter what he had thrown, the day before, he'd come in and get an out like he did last night, Sunday, or he would pitch 4 or 5 innings like he did against several times earlier this season against Georgia, against Kentucky. I mean, whatever you needed, he would do. That versatility, I mean, you got to have star players, right, to make a College World Series to get to Omaha. You got to have the Christian Moores, the Drew Beams, the Blake Burks, the Billy Amish. You have to have those guys, but you got to have guys like Kirby Cannell too. And he was absolutely pivotal. I messed up that word, but in Tennessee's success over the last several years. And it was a great send-off for him to kind of get that standing ovation as he walked off the field last night.
Yeah, it really was beautiful. The entire thing. You win comfortably. You're not sweating it. You get those great send-offs for Seacrest and Kirby, and it was just really, really nice. And the talking point that I've seen today is sort of, was that Game 2 loss actually a plus for Tennessee? I mean, you had to use one of your arms when you didn't want to, but ultimately, you look and I'd say Seacrest probably has more confidence than he's had all season now, because he just was excellent. And you're feeling really good all the way around because Christian Moore gets his groove back, and he was way off in those first 2 games. And you're, as we've been saying in all these weeks leading up, the vibes are back, because we were texting after that Game 2 and at the beginning of this third game, and we were saying, man, these vibes are off. This is, and in a not funny way. We were like, it's just not what's happening right now. And then Simo hits that home run, and you go, "Whoo, that's a relief to see him get his back a little bit." And of course, he hits the second one, which is absolutely ridiculous. A day after he's supposedly injured and had to be designated hitter. You have a legendary game from Dalton Bargo out of absolutely nowhere, who's an Omaha native, and now he gets to go back home and play in front of a hometown crowd after having the greatest performance of his career. And it just, man, it really all came together. And I'll end this by saying, do you subscribe to that? Was that second game loss sort of a plus for Tennessee? Because you're coming out feeling really confident now.
Yeah, I think so for sure. It's going to be a battle, in Omaha. You might have a game where you blow somebody out, but for the most part, these teams, I mean, they're all going there. They all are capable of winning the national championship. They're all capable of doing it. Every team there. So you kind of need to be battle tested before you go into that. And Tennessee kind of cruised the regional. They lost that one game in the SEC tournament, but otherwise, I mean, they hadn't really been in this, elimination game. Your season is over if you lose this game type moment. So it was nice that they actually had to get to that, and they had to go out there and perform. And they obviously performed extremely well. It was a blowout, and the bats came alive, and the pitching did their job. So I think that's a lot. There's a lot they can take from that series, moving forward into Omaha. They can go in really confident, knowing, hey, we went up against a tough team that really didn't want to go home. That was playing kind of that. People talked about like nothing to lose, which I felt like that was a little blown out of proportion because there's pressure on both teams, but still that team left it all out there. So I think it's a huge positive. I think the other thing I take from that series is some people got kind of annoyed that the Evansville coach, I think they maybe took the comment the wrong way. He said something like, if you limit Tennessee to solo home runs, you'll be okay. And I don't think that was necessarily like you limit them to solo home runs and you're going to beat them. You limit them to solo home runs and you have a chance. And it's true. I mean, you keep guys off the base paths. The solo home runs don't hurt you nearly as much. It's not as bad as, a leadoff double and then somebody gets on base and all of a sudden you're in a big jam. Those solo home runs, they hurt, but they're manageable. You can kind of get through it. And that was kind of the story in Game 2, I guess, where, some of those, people were on base on some of those situations. Maybe that game gets away from Evansville a little bit and they don't get back in it and ultimately take the lead and win the way they do. So that is something going forward in Omaha. You've got to have guys getting on base. You can't just have, there's a bunch of solo home runs, on Sunday as well. you want to have guys on base. You know, when you get some of those guys up like the Christian Moores, you got to be able to put a cricket number on the board and put these games away, because these other teams aren't going to stop coming. I mean, you're going to be up 5-6-0. They're still going to battle and make it a game. We've already seen it this postseason.
For sure. We got a bunch of great comments. Eric says, heck yeah, Charlie and Zach. Baseballs are headed back to Omaha, and I'm confident Tennessee wins the College World Series. I love that confidence. Hopefully, I'm right there with you. Cody says, Charlie, you were late. 1 minute. We started at 6:01, Cody. Okay. Mr. Judgmental. Kyle says, what time is the Florida State game? I don't think that's been announced yet, because there's still a game today with NC State and Georgia. Although Reed says Friday, and you can Google it. Has it been announced? I haven't seen that.
I'm not sure.
Either way, Top says top up Vols. Go Vols. T and Junior weighs in. Yeah, we reset the expectations. What you have to do to be dialed completely in. That's kind of how I felt. It's like it set us back a little bit in that game 2 loss, but it focused us completely, and sort of, you shake the sleepy out of your eyes, or whatever, however you want to say that. And
apparently that wasn't the only thing that reset their focus. That we found out later on was that the question from a reporter on Saturday after that loss, apparently, I mean, maybe that was that whole, I took that personally thing. I mean, that kind of feels like that. The loss combined with our season could end, combined with this reporter thinks that if we lose this game, our entire season means nothing. Yeah, I can see how that could set you off. And apparently that was, the case, which we'll get into here in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a second. Unpack that completely, because, I mean, Vitello went hard in a response to that question. Clearly, it traveled around that locker room, and we'll discuss it here in just a second. But before we do that, let's talk about this matchup with Florida State. So you move on from Evansville, and just look, we can finish with this in terms of talking about that game. Just huge shout out to Evansville. I mean, they really brought it. They were serious. That's a fun team, a team with a couple of guys on it that I hope maybe come to Tennessee next year. That's what happened with Clemson, a year ago. So maybe that happens. Who was that second baseman, man? He could rake. Bring that kid to Tennessee. And so, yeah, and their fans were super rowdy. I will say, if they were not playing Tennessee, I'm a fan of Evansville, although I definitely was texting you guys being like, how are we losing to a community college? These jokers, what in the world? But hindsight 2020, outside of all of that emotion, great job by Evansville. But now Tennessee moves on to Florida State. And the thing about Florida State in the first round, or first game of the College World Series, is that they are coached by the guy who coached Notre Dame in 2022. And there's really no revenge spot in terms of Tennessee, Florida State. But there's a revenge spot in terms of Tennessee and this coach. He put out probably one of the great regular season teams of all time in college baseball, a team that from top to bottom was built to win a national championship in baseball, had unbelievable pitching, had incredible offense, and they came into Knoxville and knocked that team off. And now you have a chance to get revenge on this guy, and not in a super regional, but in the College World Series. It's an exciting opportunity, but this team is good. They didn't make it to Omaha for no reason. How are you feeling about this game, Zach?
I mean, it's kind of a cop-out, but I mean, it's a 50-50 coin toss, really. I mean, both these teams are good. Florida State has power. We saw that against UConn. I mean, it looked like a youth league baseball game score, beating them with like 24-4 or whatever it was in the first game. An insane amount of home runs. I think their right fielder hit 3 home runs. It's going to be tough. And you score 10 runs the next day. UConn battles back. They score 8. So the pitching gave up some runs that day. But anyway, Tennessee gave up 10 this weekend as well. So you can't take too much from that. I mean, this is a team that can put the ball out of the park. And you're going to have to go toe to toe with them, and whose bats are more on that day. That's, I think, who wins. Maybe you try to pitcher out there that just is on and can really limit the damage. I mean, that's going to be a big part of it too. But it feels like both of these teams are going to get theirs at some point. Who's more consistent? Who's just, like I said, more on that day is going to be who wins this game. I don't have a good feeling on it either way, to be honest, because it's just we got to see how it unfolds. It's a baseball game. You've got, like you said, you made it there for a reason. Both teams, you're both capable of winning it all. Either one of these teams could win it all. Any of these 8 teams could win it all, and you're going to be a bit surprised by it. So it's kind of a toss up at this point of the season.
It definitely is, but the thing with that is that you set yourself back so badly if you don't win this first game, and Tennessee's seen it. You, in Vitello's time so far in the 2 College World Series appearances, you haven't won game 1. You won game 2 the last time, and then lost LSU in the 3rd game. But you have just to set the tone, to not get behind the 8 ball and get behind, sort of the statistics. Your odds of winning a national title after losing game 1 just go down exponentially. And the real question here is that Florida State has this big time ace, Jamie Arnold, who is very, very good. And, will he start in this game? I don't see how you have an ace pitcher and you're facing what's, probably the best offense in America. And you don't throw your ace. But of course, you could also say, like last year with Skeens, he's, am I thinking right that he didn't even play in the championship series? They were saving him for the 3rd game. They didn't need it.
He pitched against Wake Forest, I know, because it was Skeens.
Well, he pitched against Tennessee.
I know he pitched against Rhett Lauder. That was like the big, and it was kind of as advertised. I think it was like a 2-1 final.
And that was before the final, because the final was LSU Florida.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think that's right. I think there was like some speculation that he could come out of the bullpen against Florida, but I don't think he had to. I think that's how that played out.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a given that that's going to happen. I don't know where because typically your ace is not your Friday night guy, is not your first game guy. Typically you save him for later in the weekend. But I'm not going to act like I know where he's pitched all season long. And so maybe they do throw him, maybe they don't. He
did give up like 3 or 4 runs against UConn though in 5 innings, so it's like he's untouchable.
And I would be interested to see how Tennessee does against an ace, because so far in the tournament you haven't played an ace, a real true blue ace pitcher.
There is no Skeens or even a Lauder out there this year.
It doesn't really exist this season, I would say, thankfully.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
We thought it was Burns. We thought it was Chase Burns, but he got touched up, and when Wake Forest lost in the Greenville Regional.
Yeah, and so I'm interested to see how Tennessee would respond in that spot. The question's like, is it Bargo at DH? And because
hard not to after.
Yeah, how do you deny him after 2 home runs in the biggest spot of the season? Like he bought that spot for himself there. So it's going to be kind of fascinating to see exactly where Tony goes with all of this. I think you're not going to see any kind of a change. We already talked about it last week for Tennessee's pitching in that first game. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think it's going to be Stamos and then Causey. As weird as that is, Stamos kind of comes in, sacrifices himself sort of, and then Causey comes in and cleans it up. I don't really know exactly why that's a setup, but it is. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do. I have, again, no real clue as to what Tony's going to do here, but it just feels like, why would you not just do that? And so I think you're going to need 7, 8, 9 runs to win this one. It just feels like to me. And are you going to be able to do that if they do put Arnold out there? And because maybe I'm being pessimistic on Tennessee's defense, but it's just not the true strong suit of this team. And I think it's where the downfall could happen. How are you feeling there, Zach?
Yeah, probably about the same. The defense, really over the last 2 years, that's the area where Tennessee could clean things up a bit. It's not just disastrous by any means, but like we were texting yesterday, those routine plays or they're very difficult plays, but you have to make them look routine. You got to make all those plays. If you want to play at the next level, you have to make all those plays. That's the difference in college guys that don't make it and the ones that do. You make the plays that you're supposed to make, and you make the tough ones look easy. So that's definitely a concern. But I'm with you. I think 8, 9, maybe even 10 runs is what's going to be necessary to win that game. And even then, you don't know if that's going to be enough. But anything less than that, I mean, you're going to have a really good pitching performance, and they're capable of that. But man, these teams, they take you see it. We've seen it all season with Christian Moore, Billy Amick, and Blake Burke, and some of these other guys. You throw something over the plate, middle, it's going over the fence. I mean, these bats are ridiculous. And these players are good. They can hit. They are going to play at the next level. They are that talented. You can't leave it over the plate to these guys. And that goes both ways, on the Florida State side too. So you have to have really good pitching and score about 8 or 9 runs. I mean, it's no secret what the recipe is.
Yeah, I've been saying it for a while now. I mean, the real truth of this team is, they're on the upper end of college baseball in terms of defense, pitching, but they're not elite. But here is an eternal truth for this team. As long as everybody's healthy, if they can get to your bullpen, it's over. Like, that's it. It just has been the case all season long. Okay, you got an ace. Oh, he only allows 1, 2 runs into the 6th inning. Good for him. What an outing. And in Tennessee's going to lay 5 runs on you in the 7th, and it's just been that way all season long, where if these boys can just get to that next guy who's not as confident, who's not that ace, I mean, they can light it up, and they can do it against an ace too. I mean, they've done that at times also. Make no mistake there. But I just, and I mean, I feel it similarly to Gene here in the comments. He says difference between this team and 22 is its maturity. Those outbursts, they got players ejected in 22, probably cost us super regionals. No ace per se on this team, but still great pitching. Yeah, it's still good. I mean, Beam hasn't been as good as you thought he was going to be, but he's still been good. And then Xander Sechrist comes out, has the best game of his career in the most pivotal spot of the season. So
that's the guy that I want when it matters. Like, I feel like he's the ultimate competitor type guy. Like, he's not going to give in. I mean, we've seen it already in the postseason. He's taking some shots on the mound, stayed in the game. I mean, he's just kind of that ultimate competitor type guy. And hopefully we see him in a spot in Omaha where he can come through and help Tennessee really accomplish something special.
He's definitely got that dog in him. But maybe this can be the last question here. It's sort of the College World Series preview before we move on to Tony's rant. Everybody always says this. Omaha's a pro park. It's so much bigger. It's not the same. It doesn't play the same. It feels different. The offense is just not going to be, which I've watched Tennessee make it to the College World Series twice now, and I feel like there's some validity to, because so many of these college teams build their entire season around just ripping home runs, and Lord knows this team is that exact way. And then they get to Omaha and they can't hit home runs. And I would say almost all of the home runs you hit yesterday would be home runs in Omaha. So that's good. I mean, freaking 400 plus footers. Like, that's a home run anywhere. But how much validity do you give to that, and how concerned are you that Tennessee won't be able to play smaller ball here?
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate concern. I mean, this ends up being a narrative in baseball all the time, because there's so many teams that are so dependent on home runs, and you get in a situation where you're not hitting home runs and you start losing games because you're not manufacturing runs, the old-fashioned way. And Tennessee can do that. I mean, and they will, I think, in those situations. They're going to be smart, but are you going to have, those 3-4 extra runs a game that come off of a home run that maybe gets out in Knoxville that doesn't get out in Omaha? Does that cost you? I mean, yeah, it's certainly possible. I do think there's some validity to it, but everybody has to deal with that same situation. I mean, Florida State hit a ton of home runs this past weekend. They're going to have to deal with that same situation out there in Omaha. I don't know how they've played all season, but that's going to be the same fences that they're hitting, trying to clear. So
yeah, I mean,
it's tough, but
the good thing is that they are also playing in Omaha in that same exact park. Everybody always says about Tennessee's park, oh, it's really small and anybody could hit a home run there. And except the thing is that you come in there and you don't hit home runs like Tennessee does. So what do you have to say for yourself? And so hopefully you can get Blake Burke continuing to hit doubles like he has all season. Christian Moore can continue to rake as he has, and defense. I mean, just you gotta be crisp. You gotta be clean. And if they can continue the offense and play cleaner defense, it's all there. Obviously, I mean, Tennessee's the odds-on favorite to win the national championship right now, as they should be. But I still have a feeling, and I don't mean this like in a negative way. It just sort of is what it is. I got to see it to believe it. And so go do it. It's not, I don't say that negatively. I say, let's go do it, because I got to see it to believe it. Because I think this team is as set up as any team Tennessee has ever had competing at a national championship level. They're not dominating absolutely everybody, but they are as good, if not better, than everybody left in this tournament. Period. And that's you. I don't think anybody would fight you on that. So go win a national championship. Let's go do it. We won't know by the show next week. We'll know if Tennessee's playing in the national title series by next week. But we will talk about it then. But we'll see. Anything else before we move on to Tony's postgame section?
I was just thinking if they get to that final stage, that final step there, the nerves, the anxiety for fans.
That week.
Oh, it's gonna be tough.
That
it's gonna be brutal.
Tennessee makes it next week. I'm not gonna get any work done. It's gonna be it's gonna be over for me. It's just folded up. I'm going on vacation. I just gotta go to Omaha to make a pilgrimage out there.
There you go.
All right. And finally, let's wrap it up with this. Tony Vitello went on an amazing rant after that game last night. We'll talk all about it right after I tell you about our great sponsor, Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Huge thanks to them. One of our longtime great sponsors. Go get yourself a health plan. All right. So after that 12-1 win against Evansville yesterday, Tony comes in to the press conference and basically is like, look, shut my mic off if you want to, but here you go. And goes on a 7-minute rant that the comparison that I would draw to is the I'm a man, I'm 40 is sort of what it felt like, because he said this reporter yesterday asked this question of, if we lost today, would this season be another failure? And Blake Burke took umbrage with that, and so I'm going to stand up for Blake Burke here. And what were some of the high points of this? He talked about how after Tennessee beat Clemson last year, he was crying in the bathroom. He talked about how Noah Webster of Merriam-Webster's fame was a great patriot, and he loved his definition of the word success. He talked about how much he loved Jared Dickey. And how much he loved Ty Rumsey of Evansville. Maybe a recruiting tactic there, Lord knows. But it was a little all over the place. But it was awesome. I loved every second of it. What did you think, Zach, of this rant?
No, well, yeah, I definitely loved every second of it. I think universally, everyone, I've seen it all over social media today, even like Tennessee Vols accounts, just generic baseball and sports accounts, people tweeting about it, talking about it on Instagram. It's been well received. And I thought a couple of things. One, Tony actually referenced Mike Gundy later on in the press conference when he said he didn't want to go full Gundy because he didn't want to reveal his age. I think he's 45, I think, by the way. So time comes for us all, Tony. But for starters, you back up to Saturday, the original question that angered Blake Burke and I think he even mentioned Christian Moore, maybe probably a lot of the players, honestly. a reporter, and we're not sure who it was. It didn't sound like one of the local Knoxville, typical, normal media guys or gals. Asked if, if you lose this game against Evansville, basically, and he worded it kind of oddly, is it another unsuccessful season? And I think that part, because if you just ask the question, I think it's a fair question to ask because you want to get his thoughts on it. You're not really projecting your own thoughts there. You're saying, hey, if you lose this game, do you view this season as a failure or do you view it as a success? What's your take on that? Which I totally understand that
Yeah.
question. But when you throw in another unsuccessful season, even though it's just 3 words, it feels like you're taking a shot because you're then declaring how you view Tennessee's last few seasons. And for the players that have been at Tennessee, I mean, they haven't won a national championship, but look at what they've done. I mean, they've won a lot of games. They've made trips to the College World Series. They've won SEC tournaments. They've won some huge series on the road, at home. They've packed the stands. The fan support for this team is unbelievable. How could you not view their time at this? They're going to be first round draft picks, many of them. How can you not view their time as a success? And I think that was the angle Blake Burke and Christian Moore and Tony Vitello were coming at it from. But as far as Tony's response and the 6 minutes there that he spoke, which was just raw, genuine, you could tell, like you said, it was all over the place. So it wasn't like he was looking at notes and had really. It's like he had thought about it and he knew that he was going to say something about it and that it bothered him and that it angered him, but he didn't know necessarily where he was going with that whole rant. Kind of the beauty of. You good there?
Yeah, I think it froze for just another second there, but you're good. I think you're good now. Yeah.
All right. So I think that was kind of the beauty of that from Tony Vitello, is the fact that it was all over the place, showed you that he didn't have these notes. It wasn't this, he knew he was going to say something, but he didn't know exactly what he was going to say. And then it just kind of took a life of its own. It just went where it went, as you referenced many of the random things that he brought up. And it was passion. It shows you how much he cares about the players, the program, Tennessee in general. And it was believable. It was genuine, and it makes you want to root for that guy even more because they're competitors. They care a lot. They care about the program. They care about each other, and the winning or losing in Omaha is not going to change their experience. It's going to be this great thing they celebrate, and that there will always be College World Series champions if they do it, and they'll be well received in Knoxville forever. But win or lose, their experience at Tennessee has been the same. And I think that was kind of the thought from Tony Vitello there, is like, you don't get to define what we view as success. We get to do that. And I think that's more than fair.
I think the thing that really stuck out to me that I probably loved the most, because it sort of spoke to me even, was that he started off by saying, I spent a lot of just nights by myself in hotels to get here. And it, just sort of saying like, I've been in the trenches to build this thing. And he said, I think the word he used was grassroots. It had been a grassroots effort. And he said the thing that he considers a success is that he gets to come into the building every morning, do something he loves around people that he loves. And as specifically, I had a friend of mine point out, I forget the exact wording he used. If I can find it, it was here in just the last few texts that I got sent. I want to show up and get out of my car every day and be excited with people who want to be here. And a friend of mine pointed out, oh, is that a shot at Chase Burns? Because, he was kind of like, oh, I'm going to go transfer over here, find greener pastures. Ultimately, they're not greener. I don't know. But I love that sentiment because it also came along with him saying, if you want to transfer here just because you can get a fat NIL paycheck, don't come knocking. Don't waste my time. Don't waste your time, because that's not what we're here for. We're here because we come in that building every day and we want to be around each other. And we all want to be here and we want to be a part of this thing. And that is what makes it successful. Now, obviously you can take a step back and say winning a national championship is success in a different way. But you're still a part of something at this point. If you're Tony Vitello and the guys that have built this team, you're a part of something that this university has never seen, and a part of something that's special in a way that essentially no other team at Tennessee right now is doing what you're doing and has built what you've built out of the ashes of, it was nothing after Serrano left. Serrano was a good guy, but he drove this thing into the ground, and Tony just brought it out of the ashes like Phoenix. It's just really beautiful, and I love this. It's an incredible moment. Not to be cynical about it, it's an incredible recruiting tool, and maybe Tony knows that. Again, I don't want to be cynical about it like that, but it is. Who would watch that? Especially like parents. What parents would watch that and not be like, "Oh man, my kid needs to go play for that guy because he's got something cooking. He's doing something right. He's got the right attitude and is gonna instill values and he's put together a culture that I would like to see my kid be a part of, and hopefully the kid sees that too." It just all the way around. I just really loved it. It was great. If you haven't, we didn't play it here, but I highly suggest going and finding it if you haven't. But anything else on that, Zach, you'd want to get into? That was just the high points that I loved about it.
Yeah, I think the culture aspect of this program gets overlooked compared to Josh Heupel and the football program. We talked about the culture, and Josh Heupel is almost synonymous at this point when we have any conversation about Tennessee football. But with Vitello, a lot of times you think about culture, you think about the bravado and the celebrations and kind of the on-field demeanor. But that's not really the culture he's built. Like, he lets these guys be themselves, but he's built a culture where, like you kind of alluded to there, it's everybody playing for the same goal. And the only way you're ever going to win a College World Series is if or really a championship in any sport, to be honest, if every player on that team buys in to the coach's vision and to each other. You don't have to agree necessarily 100% with every decision that's going to be made. And you might think deep down that there's a better way to do it. And maybe you're right. I don't know. But if everybody doesn't believe in that same vision and they're not marching towards the same goal, your team stands no chance of winning. And I think you start writing checks and bringing in guys just because they're talented. That's a recipe for a subpar, mediocre season. You're going to win some games because you have talent, but you're not going to get through those gritty, tough it out games. You're not going to get through that series against Evansville that's scrapping and clawing, trying to, for everything they've got, they've had to fight to earn it. You're not going to beat those types of teams. I think that's what Vitello's built, and that's why this thing works so well and why he's been able to rebuild so quickly. Because over the last 3 years, we've seen a ton of talent come to the Tennessee baseball program. A lot of first, second round draft picks, early round draft picks. And he's just been able to go through that and reload, restock the roster, and continue to win with, basically almost flipping the entire roster almost every single season at this point. It's going to happen, not to the same extent as it has, I guess, in the past, but it's to some extent. You're losing quite a few guys. Yeah. Offensive playmakers from this team too, then you have to go right back into that. And he's proven he can do that. And it's because of the culture, the winning culture that he's built, and just the bonds. And I think it was a little more difficult to get that built last season. That they kind of struggled out of the gate, and it was because it was a new team. It was such a new team. It took them a little while to build it, but he did. That got off to a real rocky start in 2023, and they navigated their way through it. They didn't wave the white flag. They didn't lay down. They kept on, marching towards that goal, and they eventually ended up in Omaha.
It's truly a damn shame that Chase Burns is not on this roster, because of, obviously, it would have just bolstered what has happened that much more to have that true ace. But at the same time, to this entire point, if the shoe doesn't fit, give it to somebody else. I don't know how to exactly say that, but if you don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole, so to speak, because what you have right now is that perfect fit. And just because Burns was great doesn't mean that you have to keep him around just because he was great. Well, if he's a problem in the locker room. I don't know if he was.
I don't think
That's
he's a problem. I don't think he's a problem in the locker room per se, but I think he was more worried about his individual career, which is his prerogative by all means. But he wasn't willing to do what we were just talking about, to fit into that culture. Like,
Exactly.
you were dominating in the bullpen. You were doing what you needed to do to help this team win, and he helped them win a lot of games last season in the postseason late in the year. That, for whatever reason, that went south. He was not okay, basically, with not being promised a role, and we've seen it, talking about like with Stamos and kind of sacrificing himself there. If you're not willing to do that, it's going to be tough for you to survive on this team. And really, Burns, like, if he would have just stayed with it, he'd still find success. I mean, Christian Scott at Florida a couple years ago was a relief pitcher, kind of in the same similar role. Now he's a top prospect in AAA and has made a couple of MLB starts as a starter. Like, you can still make that transition, and Burns just was too tunnel vision on what he wanted. And like I said, that's fine. That's what you want to do. You went to Wake Forest. Now you're not going to Omaha because of that. So,
yep, it is what it is. Like, it's a damn shame, but here we are. One of these, sets of people is in Omaha, one is not. So sorry. But that, yeah, on the whole, I just absolutely loved it. It was really great and speaks to exactly what Tony's built here. And, that's that. I think that might be a show. We had a couple more comments here. Ryan said, I hope Xander gets the opening day nod against Florida State. They hit home runs, and I think we need our best pitcher against them. It is super important to win that opening game. But I don't know. There's kind of like superstition with baseball. Again, like I said, like don't fix it if it's not broken. You did just fine to this point with that weird starting setup for your first day. Who knows? They may do that, and would be fine with it because Xander was great. But
sometimes it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then you go try something different. It's like, why didn't we just stick with? I don't know. It's gonna be one of those things where if it goes wrong, we're all going to get up here and say, well, you should have done this. You should have done that. And here, a week before, a few days before, we don't really have a good suggestion or advice for Tony. So,
I mean, if I had the correct advice for Tony, I would be the coach of this baseball team.
Yeah.
So, and I am not. Nick says we have a live show if Tennessee makes the finals. It's sort of undefined when that might exactly be. The schedule has not been released. And I genuinely have no idea what I'll be doing this weekend. So I'll say just look for us on Monday, next Monday. I don't want to make any promises that I can't keep, but I appreciate that you would want that. Thank you. Thank you for watching. And that is a show. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. Thank you to everybody who watched. Nick, Ryan, Gene, Tennessee Jr., Mel, Scott, Reed, Kyle, Cody, even though he pointed out that I was late to start the show, you're forgiven. Volunteer Eric, everybody, you are truly appreciated. We couldn't do this show without you. Thanks for that. Yeah, that's all. We go make it to the national championship game, and we will be talking about it next week.
See you guys later.